Now to Osun State, where TVC News correspondent Femi Akonde joins us to bring us the latest over there. And is standing by with Professor Armstrong Dachaba. He's the Director of Broadcast Monitoring Commission. Femi, the debate yesterday is the talk of the town. What's the mood like there in Osun?
Yes, absolutely, Nifemi. The debate is still the talk of the town right here in Osun State. Well, a big win for those candidates that participated in the debate, and for those that declined to participate. I would say that from the feelers we're getting from the electorate, they're not impressed with the attitude of those that turned down the invitation to be on the debate. And you know that Osun State right now is under the spotlight. It's the latest election destination in Nigeria, of course, in the build-up to the governorship election that is on Saturday, which is tomorrow. Stakeholders and everyone are on ground here in Osun State, and of course, one of the stakeholders is the National Broadcasting Commission, and I have here the director of Broadcast Monitoring, Professor Armstrong Dachaba. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, then. Thank you for joining me. Well, let's start with what happened in Ekiti State. You know, let's use that as a premise for this discussion. In Ekiti State, when results were announced, when results were being collated, tension started building, and then a radio station went against the law, and the National Broadcasting Commission had to come down hard on this radio station and shut it down. What is in place to guard against a reoccurrence of such in this election, because it is also a very critical point in Osun State right now?
First of all, Femi, I would like to take you a little bit back to your background report about the debate that your station organized yesterday. I want to commend TVC for creating that platform. I also want to commend other groups, broadcast stations and other associations that provided similar platform. It cannot be too much, you know, to create platforms for people to ventilate, you know, their political viewpoints. Pluralism is very key to the democratic experiment, and that is one critical role that the broadcast medium must play. Create avenue for people to market their ideas so that the electorate can actually test the quality of discourse and eventually decide who they think can best represent their interests. So I commend you, and we hope that in future more political parties will find the opportunity to be engaged in the process. But back to Ekiti. Ekiti gubernatorial election, to say the least, is not a good example of the coverage of the broadcast media with regards to electioneering in Nigeria. I say so for obvious reasons. What we found in Ekiti as a build-up was that broadcast stations operating in Ekiti State became largely divided. They became partisan. It was obvious that they were aligned. Apparently, the state broadcaster, the Ekiti Broadcasting Service, became a platform for the government, the governor, and the political party that he represented. We also found out that the private stations that were on ground also made themselves readily available for opposition. And what you found then was misuse of the airwave, where particular parties controlled the delivery of the communication medium. And we found all sorts of infringements, all sorts of reckless delivery of speeches and commentaries, some of them outrightly inciting, and some of them with the tendency to disrupt the electoral process. That was why, if you followed closely, you found out that at the time, one of the stations allowed itself to be used by a desperate politician, so to say, who went to the extent of declaring results ahead of the Independent National Electoral Commission. And of course, you remember that the NBC had to invoke the law and requested the station to go off air because to allow the continued misuse of that medium will have tantamount to a lot of their consequences for the democratic process and also for the life of the citizens in that state.
Yeah, in Osun State, so there are a number of private-owned broadcast media organizations, and of course the state-owned media. Now, before this election, what kind of engagement, or what level of engagement have you had with them, sensitizing them? Of course, I know they all know the broadcast code and should adhere to some of these, but sometimes, you know, ownership influence prevails on maybe the kind of content that most of these radio stations churn out. So what level of engagement have you had with them to ensure that, yes, moving into this election and even after votes are cast and waiting for the final results, that they still play according to the rules?
Thank you so much for raising that. It's traditional with the NBC. Over the years, we've organized a lot of training sessions, capacity building for broadcast stations, and specifically during elections, we do engage the broadcast stations. We organize conferences, we organize seminars, we organize workshops, we visit the broadcast stations, we interface with them, we invite the owners and the managers. About a month ago, the NBC was here, and we met with all the broadcast stations here to remind them that they have a responsibility to be professional, to follow the broadcasting code, and ensure that they use the broadcast medium, you know, for the good of society generally, that they should use it to deepen democracy. Of course, we insisted that they must enlighten the electorate. They must give political parties opportunity to be heard. They must cover and report the elections in a most credible manner, not allow distortion of facts, not allow invective, hate speeches to emanate from political broadcasts. We do all of that. We're also very mindful, like you said, that the pressure of the proprietors will always be there. But again, we give a consistent analogy that can only happen to the extent that the professionals allow it to happen. People who establish medical hospitals don't go there and tell medical doctors which injection to give to patients. So we expect that managers of broadcast stations will be as professional enough as to resist the pressure of their owners. And that is key. The pressure will always be there. And I tell you, especially as we get close to election day, the politicians, of course, you know, they are there. Their sole goal target is to ensure that they win, not minding which tactics that they use. So it's the responsibility of the broadcast manager, you know, the anchorman, to say, look, wait a minute. We have a responsibility to oxygenate this democratic process. It has to be done according to the rules. It has to be done with due regards to ethics and law for the sole purpose of maintaining sanity in the democratic experiment.
Yes, we're in an era of fake news and misinformation, you know, and especially now during election, there are so many things, so many stories, fabricated stories out there. And even after votes are cast and collation is ongoing, there is that temptation to speculate who, or to even maybe predict correctly or wrongly who the likely winner would be. As broadcast media organizations, or okay, as the monitoring body now, what should these broadcast organizations be looking out for to ensure that they avoid these pitfalls?
Femi, again, I'm happy you raised this point. The biggest danger to the practice and the credibility of the broadcast medium, as we see all over the world today, is the dependence or reliance on the social media. What normally happens is that some broadcast stations, they abdicate their editorial responsibility, or they display ignorance with regards to the strength of their own professional ethics. And rather than editorialize, rather than go through news materials, they pick from unauthenticated media, social media sources, and they report. And that happens very often during elections. Sometimes, even when the votes are being counted, you begin to see concocted, unverifiable, unauthenticated results emanating through social media sources. And many of them speculate. Sometimes they carry postings of election results from prior elections and circulate as if they are new election results. And people, like you rightly said, people do all kinds of projections. So the responsibility is actually on the broadcast station and those who represent the broadcast stations in the dissemination ecology to ensure, right, that whatever the broadcast medium is putting out is credible, it is factual, it is authentic, and it is not a distorted fact.
Okay, in the build-up to this election, the umpire, that's the Independent National Electoral Commission, banned the use of phones and cameras around the voting area, around the, that's at the point where a voter is about to cast his ballot. This was very controversial, and even for broadcast organizations, some journalists have said, could this also mean a ban on like a reporter or like a camera, like a news camera, from getting close to that area and capturing the activities around the voting area? Help us clarify these issues.
I'm glad you raised it, but I also followed the statement that INEC issued after the regulation, and I think they clarified it. They said they were not limiting media practitioners from the voting scene. They were not in any way even asking voters not to go to the polling station with their camera phones. The point is that at the time you are voting, it is supposed to be a strictly private matter, you know, and I think the issue arose from the fact that some people will go and vote and use their camera to capture the party they voted for and use that as evidence of delivery so that they can be paid for, you know, and the INEC took this decision to further sanitize the electoral process. I think the idea is that they don't want that to be an avenue that will perpetrate or encourage vote buying. And I also heard, they said, immediately you cast your vote, you return to the security officer who is holding your phone, and you have your phone, and you can go back and pick any pictures you want to pick, so long as you are not doing that at the particular time that you are voting. I personally believe that it is an inconvenience that people, or sacrifice that people can make just for 1 or 2 minutes, if only it will deepen and further establish credibility for the democratic process.
Okay, everyone is concerned about this issue of vote buying. Stakeholders, governments, civil society. People are talking about it. It's now like a clear and present danger to the credibility, the free and fairness of elections in Nigeria.
Yes, I think so, and a lot of interested watchers in the democratic process have actually identified vote buying as a dangerous trend for the credibility of the democratic process. I believe that, personally, I believe that INEC's initiative is good. We hope that with the experiment in Osun State, the tendency will be reversed, and if it works well, it may be a strategy to curb it going ahead in 2019.
Okay, so lastly, what's your expectation with the work done from your end? What's your expectation? How do you assess? What's your assessment of how the whole process will pan out in terms of course, broadcast monitoring?
I must say, so far in Osun State, we have reason to be hopeful, very hopeful, that the electoral process will come out well. Broadcast stations have discharged themselves equitably up till now. Virtually every broadcast station here, from our monitoring reports, including the state broadcast station and the federal-owned broadcast station, have made their platform available to all the political parties. We have monitored both the ruling party, the opposition party, and relatively even unknown political parties having their time on the airwaves, and that is very commendable. Secondly, we've not had the kind of animosity, you know, and hateful and inciting comments that occasioned the other election in Ekiti State. The language of discourse so far happens to be peaceful, it happens to be decent, and that is very encouraging.
All right, Professor Armstrong Dachaba, Director of Broadcast Monitoring of the National Broadcasting Commission. Well, there you have it, from the horse's mouth. Broadcast media organizations should be guided according to the rules of the NBC. Over to you, Nifemi.
Thank you, Femi Akonde, for that insightful talk. Well, all eyes on Osun, and be reminded that we'll begin a live coverage today, giving you in-depth analysis of what's happening there ahead the 22nd of September election in Osun State. It begins on TVC News at 7 p.m. today.